Hello, welcome back to the Yera Elohim podcast, where the fear of the Lord isn't just a concept but a way of life. In a world that's lost its reverence for God, we stand firm, diving into scripture, wisdom, and unwavering obedience. This is more than a conversation, it's a call to walk in true fear of the Lord. Let's get into it. What's going on, Omi? How you doing,
Uh,
brother?
Good man. Try to
Good?
figure this out. Yeah, this
I
whole
know.
calling thing.
Yeah. Sorry to anyone that's listening. We have no audio. I mean, we have no visual. We usually record a visual and then post it on YouTube. But hey, if you don't even watch it on YouTube, then I guess you're not really noticing any of a difference. So yeah,
Like,
we're still here to produce. Sorry about last week. It's been real busy. Omi and we've just been on two different, totally different schedules, and it's been hard to record. But we are back on it, back on the grind without, I don't know, without a doubt. We're back on
yeah,
it.
without a step to the pep. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, Isaac. I got the topic for today. It is why we shouldn't lean on our own understanding.
All right.
I could hit you with a verse, or I could just ask you straight up what that means to you. Why we shouldn't lean on our own understanding, but only God's way.
Hit me up
What do
with
you
that
feel?
verse real quick.
I got you. What would to go with Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6? It reads, Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not seek. Depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take.
We can fall victim to the constant thought that our minds and our thought process is better than God's. And with that, we fall victim to our own crimes. And it's so important that we understand that God knows more than us. You know, God knows what's best for us. He knows how to take care of us. He knows the paths that He has in store for us. And if we ever get into the mindset that we know more than God, it's a very dangerous place to be.
Mhm.
Therefore, like we should always keep ourselves humbled before God and acknowledge the fact that He does know more than us. And we should be okay with that. I mean, we should take it as like a relief,
Yeah,
that we don't have to have it all figured out all the time because there is a God that does have it figured out all the time.
and I don't see who would want to play God anyways, and
Mm.
knowing what they want to do and how they're gonna do it. There's this phrase out there like everybody has their own plans, they got timing for things, they have it all sorted out. But if it's not God's plan, if it's not on his timing, it might not come to fruition because if God is all understanding and all knowing, he's going to be the one to set it all up. You might have plans, but he could go in between that in a heartbeat. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. I hit you with a question. It is, why is it difficult to surrender, control, and lean on God's understanding?
This is a big one for me, honestly, because, God has proven himself to be very much real in my life, time after time again. And it's like I go through phases where I am fully leaning on God and not my own understanding. And then there's other areas where I feel like I'm just completely distant from God. I don't know why. Honestly, I think it's just part of the everyday struggle of being a Christian, of fully trusting God. Because even though I'm a Christian and I go to church and I worship God and I know that God is real, it can still be really hard for me to trust Him each and every single day with all of my issues. And it's not even that like I'm doing it intentionally that I'm not trusting God. Some days with the struggles that I'm going through, I get distracted and I feel like I don't have time to really turn to God as much as I normally would if I wasn't going through the same problem. But I feel like it's hard for a lot of people to not turn to God because sometimes it doesn't always feel like God's there, especially because He's not a physical person. It can be hard to turn to Him, and it can be very easy to just lean on our own understandings for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. The only input I have in that is just like we have these moments where we do kind of want to play God, even though we, don't try to. It's weird, but we do. We end up trying to plan things. We end up trying to understand in our own ways on why this is happening, how is it happening, like grieving, or if you're in a rocky path and you come up with your own like way of settling it, being like, okay, this is okay for me, and
Yeah.
you come up with these ideas and these your own understanding, that could throw it all away because it might not be the right way to think of it. That's why going back to scripture and praying, God giving you the answers for certain things, that's why that's important. And it is confusing because you don't hear anything, you don't see anything, so it's very difficult. But he has his own understanding, and when he tells you it and he gives it to you through prayer and through, wisdom through other people, it shows. Um,
Absolutely.
but that's all I got for that one.
Yeah.
I have another question. It is, why do we often seek logic over faith when making decisions?
I think that just goes back to our human nature. I mean, it's so easy to place our beliefs into something that is of logic than rather of faith, because something with faith is trusting even when you don't fully understand. Like for me, like it's hard to have faith sometimes when I'm, going to school or whatever it may be. Like it's hard to have faith because I don't always see the end result right away. Whereas with logic, like I feel like you see more of an end result. I feel like you can understand it more. There's more of a thought process behind it. There's more of a step process. Like, you do the first step, second step, third step, and then you get the result. Whereas faith, it's kind of just trusting. It's just
Yeah,
having that
blind.
hopeful spirit that everything's going to be okay at the end of the day, even
Yeah,
if it seems like it's not going to be. And I think it's very easy for us as humans to fall victim to that and to constantly look for a logical response rather than placing our faith and looking for a more godly response.
yeah,
For me, it's been very easy for me recently to have more of a faithful or more of a faith outward, look on things, because
yeah,
logic, I feel like for me, logic just doesn't even make sense nowadays. Like I know that the world has its own way of thinking, sure, but if I'm not living in the world, what does that matter to me? And that's
mhm,
why I just have to go back and I have to say, like, Lord, this is my thought process, but I know it could be skewed. So I'm putting my complete faith in you. And if I'm wrong in my thought process, I pray that you correct me. And that's where like I go and like I'm not leaning on my own understanding, but also I'm trying my hardest to understand what's going on. But how about you? Do you find it hard to like differentiate those two?
yeah. I want to have the answers immediately, all the time. And, it's not easy because I know I have to have faith, which is faith is a little bit blind. You can't see it. And it takes time. It takes a lot more time than you think. I think God does it for you to have patience as well, to find patience in yourself. Because the more patient you'll be, I think the more He'll give you. I don't know if this is true, but He does put us through these tests to be more patient. And
Absolutely.
I feel like the longer you go, just being patient and praying and being faithful and understanding that you can't see anything, but God is working, I feel like He rewards a lot more. So it is hard for me because I struggle with wanting the answer like right away.
Yeah.
And that's a tough break because sometimes we're not going to get the answer. It's like a mother to a child or a father to a child. They know more than the child, but the child wants answers, but sometimes the child doesn't need the answers. It's the parent who knows the answer and that can protect them from something or understand it a little bit more. And that's not saying like the kid can't know or anything, but if it's safer and if it's more what you call more better or in a better case for the child, then that's what they're going to do is keep it from them
Yeah.
and explain it another way.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what God does with us. He'll show us and explain things to us in a different way, yet we still don't understand. But it's the same answer. It's just in a different way.
It's true.
And
And I feel like we live in a very like fast-paced world. Like
yep,
we're Googling everything, chat GPTing everything. Like we're looking
yep,
for a
yep,
response now. And
yeah,
those types of browsers or extensions, they use logic. They use their computer generated responses. And that's not God. It's like, sure, those resources are nice, but if you're turning to that every time you have an issue, when
yeah,
are you really gonna get the same benefit as if you are turning to God when you have an issue? When you're turning to God and let's say you search up, why do I have such a low patience with my father, right?
yeah,
It's going to give you a whole step process of why you may be struggling, how you can fix it, how you can communicate with that person, and that's using normal logic, right? But then if you go and you present the same answer to God or the same question to God, may combat that with another situation where he's going to test you, where you have to be patient again, where you have to grow in patience, because God's not just going to give you anything. I was at a retreat this weekend for my church's youth ministry. And
Yep.
one of the biggest things was it was talking about how we shouldn't just be hoping. We shouldn't just be hoping for results. We have to actually be going to war for them. We
Mm,
can't sit here and just wish that patience would fall on our lap, or success would fall on our lap, or a better attitude would fall on our lap. Like, we have to go to war for it. We have to actually put in the work for it. We can't just be sitting here hoping that God grants us these things, because when we ask God for more patience, he's not going to just give us more patience. He's going to give us more situations for us to be patient in.
yeah, no, I agree. That's really good. To add to that, I would say the working part is being faithful and being able to go with life without having the answer, like you're saying, just you're pushing through because you know there will be an outcome and it's going to be good, and like you said again, we live in this world, but we don't have to be part of this world. Everything's fast paced, but God's not fast paced. He's a slow and steady God. He created the earth in 7 days when he could have done it in a snap of the fingers.
It's true.
It's the patience, it's the growing, it's the making everything just a little bit more perfect.
Yeah.
That's
Because
what our God does.
Yeah, and if everything was given to us in a snap of a finger, like, what would be how could we be proud of our results? If everyone could have $1 million, that would mean that nobody was really special. If everyone had $1 million, like, that wouldn't make anyone
Yep.
stand out. If
Yeah.
everyone was patient, then, you know, nobody would have to go to, I don't know, therapy to get more patience. You know what I mean? Like, if everything could just be given to us in a matter of seconds, nobody would have the same ethical standpoint to go ahead and work towards that. Nobody would have the same work ethic. Nobody would have the same motivation, because it would just be given to us. And there's a benefit when putting in the work and seeing your results pay off, and
Yeah.
especially when you're working alongside with God. When you're staying patient, when you're staying obedient, um when you're honoring him with your life, and you're seeing the results and the fruits that come from that, it gives you something to be proudful, or proud
Hmm.
of, not prideful. Gives you something
Yeah.
to be proud of, and something to acknowledge, like, God is really moving in my life. But if
Yeah.
he just gave us everything like that, I think our relationship with God will become more of a transactional thing rather than a deep, intimate relationship.
Yeah. No, exactly. I agree with you. I looked at it as like when we were camping that one weekend and we had to work for our food or we had to work for our shelter. It was very slow and steady. We had to take steps, but the outcome was so much more worth it because we worked for it. I do agree. It happens with everything in life, just normal things in life, but we definitely need that disconnect to be able to feel that again.
For real. You just mentioned our camping trip, and I had to say this out loud because it's just so funny. So Omi and I were setting up this tent, and it was taking forever. I mean forever. We kept setting it up, and it kept falling over. It kept setting it up, it kept falling over. And finally we had it all set up. And it's like dark now. Like, we did not give ourselves enough time to, like, set
Yeah.
everything up. And then we didn't
Got
have
there a
any
little late.
flashlights. Only had the only flashlight, and it was a mess. And I told Omi, I said, "Why don't you go get, what, the wood and the ice or whatever, so that we could
Yeah, I
actually
had to go
store our
back
food
out.
and
Yeah.
whatnot, and then we could have a fire for tonight." And I was like, "I'll stay back, and I'll fill up the air mattresses and set everything up." So he went out, and then I started filling up the air mattresses. Bro, I didn't realize it, and I didn't tell you this because I didn't want to embarrass myself. But as I was filling it up, Bro, I did not have the proper tip on the pump
Something,
because
man.
when you came back, because bro, while okay, hold on, while you were gone, I was trying to fill them up and I was making no progress. It was faster for me to just blow air from my mouth into the tube and fill up the mattresses that way than it was with the actual pump. And bro, I was struggling. I thought I was gonna have like a freaking asthma attack. I was dying. And then you show up and I'm like, wait, this thing does not work. I said, this stupid pump is a piece of crap. And you're like, it's not that bad. And then you put it on, and I realized I had the wrong tip on it. And I'm like, I can't sit here and admit that. So I'm not going to say anything, but
You finished up blowing it with your mouth, just blowing air, spraying
uh,
into that.
dude, I
That
was
was
dying.
hilarious, bro. That
Anyways,
did take a while. It
but you
almost took
know
the rest of
what?
the night.
That taught me a lot of patience for sure.
Yeah, man, we wanted to sleep, but we couldn't until we had those mattresses up. Just that little disconnect, it made us, I don't know, it made us realize how much more you had to work for
Yeah.
the result. And it felt so much more better.
And it teaches you to be more grateful, you know.
Yeah, no.
And it's
Yeah,
like after we were done filling up those air mattresses, even though it took like 40 minutes, like it was like, yeah, all right, we did it. And now it's done. You know,
yep,
what if we would have quit?
yep,
Then we would have been sleeping on a hard surface for 2 nights. But we
yeah,
kept with it and we got it done. And then we got to enjoy our sleep. I mean, we woke up freezing, but
yeah.
at least we weren't on a hard surface.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we went through that. It was a good disconnect. It was a good like struggle bus
Yeah.
almost to get us back to reality and being like, okay, not everything's easy. How we have it now, where we could sit in a room with the AC and lay on a nice mattress with blankets and decide whether we want to be cold or hot, which is crazy to me, but yeah, we
Mhm.
get to decide that, instead of trying to wake up early in the morning, make a fire, make some coffee. It's a good experience. I'm glad we did it. It was a good disconnect.
That was fun.
Not a lot was said in that trip, which was weird but nice. We know each other so well now that it's like we don't really have to talk. And we could go for hours talking about certain things, but it really was just a disconnect. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but it was different because it was 2 days and we haven't had like a good 3 or 4 2 days with each other since maybe missions trips. And that
Yeah,
was with different because I was with guys. But yeah, that was a good disconnect.
it was fun.
What you call? I got the next question for you.
You ready?
This one kind of seems like the last one. If you don't want to answer it, that's fine. Just kind of skim over it or whatever. But the question is, what are the consequences of relying solely on human wisdom? I'm guessing that's wisdom from like peers, like people online. Like I don't know, who would that be?
Yeah, I
Wisdom.
think the
Andrew
consequences
Tate
on
or something like that. That's like a human wisdom person.
I think the consequences on human wisdom is it's kind of like what you said earlier. It's like people trying to play God, and we just simply aren't that advanced. Like, what is it? I think we only unlock about 3% of our brain in a whole lifetime that
Yep.
we're alive. And it's like, if God is the one that created our brains, think about how much more intelligent God is. Think about how much more smart he is and how articulate he is. And if we're trying to lean on on our own understanding every
Yeah.
day, like we're gonna struggle. It's gonna be
Hmm.
hard. And it's like I feel like a lot of people play God, but they're also playing themselves at the end of the day because they're taking all their responsibility for no reason. They're
Yeah.
stressing themselves out for no reason. Like when the 12 disciples decided to get up and leave everything and just follow God,
Hmm.
they weren't leaning on their own understanding. They were completely leaning on God. And
Yep.
it's like you have to think about it. I bet you those men were stress free
Yep.
because they just knew that if they followed God and if they kept their eyes focused on Christ, they'll be all right. They didn't
Yep.
have to worry about food. They didn't have to worry about housing. They didn't have to worry about nothing. All they worried about was just following God to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we take that same mentality to today's day and age, like, sure, yes, we have to go to work, we have to do this, but like, if we truthfully just follow God with everything in us, the amount of stress that could be lifted off of you is unimaginable. Like,
Yep.
for me, when I try to play, like, I guess quote unquote God in my
Yep.
own life, I get very stressed out very quick because I know I can't do it. I'm fully aware that I'm not the one who should be making all the calls. I know that I should be leaning to God. I know that I should be turning to God and asking Him, like, Lord, what do you want me to do in this situation? Because I'm not capable of making those types of decisions. And I don't even want to make those types of decisions. It's relaxing and it's comforting to know that there's a God that knows the best decisions for me. And all I
Hmm.
have to do is just trust Him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to answer your question, I think people really are their worst enemies because they're so concerned about trying to figure it out themselves. But if you just took the time to let God answer the questions and let God figure it out for you, because He already has it figured out, all He has to do is just give you the wisdom and the knowledge and answer your prayers. I mean, it's a lot of weight off your shoulders. And
Hmm.
people might look at that logic and think that it's stupid and that it's unrealistic,
Yeah.
but you really won't know how that really feels until you truthfully give it all to God. Because
Yeah.
people who have never done it before, sure, that sounds absolutely crazy and insane. I can acknowledge it. Yeah, I'm just going to let God fully figure out my life and I'm going to let Him dictate what happens. To a person that doesn't believe, that may sound kind of crazy.
Hmm.
But if you've never given it a shot, how
Yeah.
would you know that it doesn't actually work? So, I mean, for me, I've lived both ways. I lived in the way of trying to figure it out myself and leaning on my own and trying to give myself all the answers. And unfortunately, it has only led me to disaster. And I'm
Mm.
glad that it has because it's given me the realization that I need God, that I can't do this on my own, that I'm not capable. And it's given me the opportunity to turn to God in
Yep.
every single situation in my life, even the easy ones and even the hard ones, whatever it may be. I ask God, Lord, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to react? What do you want me to say? What do you want me to do? And I just let God dictate my life.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I could add to that is when I think of wisdom, I just think of King Solomon and how the only thing he wanted was wisdom. And when I think about the wisdom that he wanted, it right away goes straight to like he wants God's wisdom, you know? And God gifted him that, which was amazing, you know?
Yeah.
But it wasn't human wisdom. It wasn't his own wisdom. It wasn't his own understanding. He wanted to understand in a way that God did. Not saying that he wanted to play God, he wanted to be able to understand so he could lead his kingdom, you know, as a king, you know, he really wanted to help his people as much as he could. And he wasn't the best king, but he asked for that and he did. He got I think one of the greatest gifts was wisdom, you know, and that's a story to tell. And I'm glad it's in the Bible that we can see it, that he didn't ask for riches, he didn't ask for kingdoms, he didn't ask to be ruler of everything, you know. It's just to have understanding and wisdom, which is
And I think
very
the
powerful.
most impactful thing about that story is the fact that all he asked was for wisdom. And guess what? He got everything else on top of
Exactly.
it. Like he only asked for wisdom, but then he was able to lead a kingdom. I'm sure he had riches and he had
Yeah, yeah,
stuff
exactly.
that he actually did desire. But the only thing that he asked for was wisdom. But with that, he was able to then achieve other things. And yeah,
Yeah,
I
no,
think that's a very important thing to know as well.
yeah. I'll hit you with the last question. It's a little deep and personal, but
All right.
I imagine you'll have a story. The question is, can you think of a time when your own reasoning led you in the wrong direction?
Yeah. So I know that I've mentioned this a lot, but I mean, it's just my testimony and it's my life, right? But my parents divorced towards the end of 2018, and then that process was going on for about a year. And in 2019, in May, my sister died in a car accident.
Yep.
And back to back, those two things that occurred in my life, I felt like I couldn't depend on God because, the natural response was, if God is real, how could He let these things happen to me? How
Yep.
could He be letting these things happen to me? And why would He be allowing this pain to occur in my life? And I took a lot of matters into my own hands and I started indulging into sin that I shouldn't have been doing, and I started hanging around the wrong people, and I was not acting like a Christian. I was going to church still, but if you looked at my outside life, it definitely did not represent Christ at all. I was doing all the wrong things, and there was even a really low point in my life during that area where I got so mentally tired, I tried to take my life away. And It's like when, and that's like what the turning point was for me.
Yeah.
It's like I was going through so much and I was turned off by God because I was wondering, why would he do this to me? Why do I have to experience this? I reached such a low, and after I was going through those things, I remember one night I just went outside and I just looked up into the sky and I just screamed and I said, Lord, why are you doing this to me? And he answered and he said, I just need you to trust me. I know what I'm doing with your life. And literally, it was like like a light switch just flipped, and I realized that this trauma that I'm going through, sure it hurts. Yeah, I don't want to be going through it, but this is the time where I should be turning to God and I should not be turning away from God. And I started to get my life right. You know, I'm sure I still struggled. I don't really remember exactly what I did, but I'm sure I still had my own struggles and my own temptations. But I was giving it to God, and I was allowing God to take care of me, and I was allowing God to heal me, and I was allowing God to help me through it. And I wasn't leaning on my own understanding. And he took away those thoughts of hurting myself, of harming myself, of ending my life, and he helped me get through those struggles. But it was very much night and day. Like when I wasn't consulting God in my everyday life, I was totally like my mind was shattered. I didn't want anything to do with anyone. I was upset. I was pissed off. I had crazy thoughts. But then
Yeah.
when I had that encounter with God, I realized that I'm going through this for a reason. You know, this is happening for a reason. And I'm going to use this as part of my story to hopefully help others, which is exactly what I did.
It's a good thing to reflect on my own story. I mean, I have my own testimony. You know, I could do one that it pops up in my head all the time because it was something that I was really trying to reason and try to do on my own and kind of say, okay, this will work even though it won't, all the signs were there that won't. It was a relationship with a girl, our views weren't exactly the same, and I kept pushing, and it was a difficult time because I wasn't really connected with my family, and this is all on me. This is not reflecting on the other person. I was really lost, and I gave myself reasons, well, this is why this is going to work, and I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And that was my biggest thing. I just want to prove everybody wrong, and I prayed to God a lot of times, and I always prayed to him, if this is the one, let it be, and if it isn't, take it away. And I was just listening to my cousin's podcast, and the one guy he had on there, his name was Wayne Robertson, I believe. He said, "It really hit me. If you pray that prayer, know what's coming, because God will give you the answer." I have a verse for that too, if I can remember. I'm trying to remember. John 16, chapter 24. Until now, you have not asked for anything in my name. Asking you, receiving, your joy will be complete. I believe that's the verse. And I
Mhm.
believe that's, yes.
Yep.
Because, yeah. Anyways, with that verse, I prayed and I said, if this is the one, let it be. And if it's not, take it away from me. And I kept praying that verse, and God was shoving it, man. He was like, this ain't the one, just give it up almost. Yeah, I'm giving you the answer, and I was giving myself reasons again, and I was trying to lean on my own understanding, and it just wasn't working. I hit that breaking point. I was like, you gave me all the answers, and I didn't listen, and
Yep.
that's from my selfishness and literally just me being human. But it taught me so much that I cannot do much of anything without the Lord, I can only get so far. The biggest thing for me is relationships and stuff, and I'm sure it is for you, but yeah, that one taught me a lot, man.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
love it.
that's all I got. I don't know if you got anything else. I don't know if you want to end it here.
Sounds good. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like, subscribe. We do
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you tuning in. Again, sorry for no visuals if you are watching on YouTube, but hope to get that fixed and return back to normal next week. Stay tuned. Next week, we have a guest coming up.
Yeah,
Our first
big deal.
guest of this new podcast that we have, the Yet I Elohim podcast. Very excited for this next episode. So stay tuned. And we'll see you guys next week. Adios.
Peace.